what's up? Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Life in a Show podcast. My name is Jason Wojo. I'm the host, and I am joined by Polish Peter, my co-host, my partner in crime. And today, dude, we are going to talk about debt. D-E-B-T, a dirty word, depending on where you hear about it. If you're talking with Dave Ramsey versus Robert Kiyosaki, and there's all these influences out there. Debt is good, debt is bad. No, like I want a lot of debt. No, I don't want any debt. And like, let's unpack what this means for people, man.
Yeah, so we're talking about debt?
Debt. Yeah, but you're not allowed to say debt because it sounds like it could be that or it could be dead. I don't exactly know what the accent.
Could be so many different things. Yeah, right. That's why I keep things simple, language simple, right?
That's right. So let's check it out, man. Like, so let's kind of like first define what I think I'd say debt is. And what you're doing when you take on debt really is all you're doing is trading away some future output for the experience of something now. And by output, I mean, it could be time, because you are now trading away your future work hours to make money for the enjoyment of something. It could be maybe you take on debt on a rental portfolio and you're trading away future income that could be coming to you because now it's going to pay off the mortgage. So you're basically making a trade, right? And in most cases, it is a time trade because most people are actively making money during their work hours, and then they are exchanging that for a house, a car. You don't have money to go to school, so you take out a loan. So you're trading away future income for that loan, right? And this is where so it's important to understand it's basically a trade, and you got to look at your vision and use that as your filter to decide whether or not debt is going to help you get there quicker or is it going to hold you back.
Yeah, and I think we use the Gale Life Gateways when we do these events. We talk about mortgage, right?
Yeah.
You want to elaborate a bit about the mortgage, what that actually means? Because I think it's a big eye-opener for people. So
I first heard this from Steve Cook, the founder of Life in Air. And he said, you go to sign for a mortgage, and, we all joke around that you're signing your life away, but you actually are when you understand the whole trade concept.
The 1,400 pages.
Right, yeah. And so, yeah. And so you get a mortgage for typically about 30% of your income. Now, that means like if you have a job, making $100,000 a year, you'll probably get approved for a mortgage. If you say you're making $10,000 a month, you'll probably get approved for a mortgage of around $3,000 a month, a third of your income. But what this also means is you're giving away a third of your working hours every single day for the experience of living in that house. And by the way, you're not just doing it today, you're doing it for the next 30 years because that is the average mortgage term, the length of a mortgage. So think about this for a second. When you take on a mortgage, and by the way, I'm not against having a mortgage. And you could easily say well, I'm going to spend money on rent or blah, blah, blah. I get it. I'm not trying to defend mortgages or demonize them. But what I'm saying is you got to understand that you are trading away future time for the ability to live in this house, man. That's kind of what the trade that I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah, and what really hit me in that conversation when I first heard it too is because when I heard this, I was still, like a W-2 kind of a conversation. And I'm like, So when I go to work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., third of those hours, so this is the whole morning basically, I'm basically working to pay off that mortgage. You know what I mean? Right. None of that money goes into my own pocket. I'm like, interesting. Could there be another way of getting this? You know what I mean? So you start thinking outside the box sometimes and you understand it.
Well, dude, it actually gets even worse because it's a third of your income, but that's based on your gross income. It's not even your net. So we're that 30% can easily jump to 40+% of your actual take home money. And this is where we wonder why we are broke every month and why we are struggling, why we can't launch that business or whatever, because we have these bills, and this is where for instance, a car loan, the gurus recommend no more than 10% of your income goes to a car loan. Okay, so 10% of my income, and guys, dude, none of my degrees are in math, so I always use easy examples. So that means somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 minutes per day is going towards your car payment. So now we got our loan, our mortgage, we got our car loan. So right there's literally about half of our day.
Yeah.
So maybe we're working just till lunch to cover our car and our mortgage, and then we have credit
Student
card
loans.
debt, right? Student loans,
Mm.
private, dude, this is where like it becomes so suffocating, I think, for people to like look at their day and try to be like, and this is where it's understandable why people are living month to month because there's so many bills, and this doesn't even include our actual living expenses like food and groceries and utilities, right, and insurance, like all these other things, and you can quickly see like where debt can really like kind of like make it very difficult to pursue your vision.
Well, and if you really think about it too, how it plays out when it comes to paying everybody, we're typically the last ones to get paid, right? Think about how you do the bills. You got to pay this, you got to pay this, you got to pay this, you got to pay this. At the end of the day, whatever's left over, I get to take, right?
Which is
So,
always nothing, right?
yeah, which
It's
is pretty
nothing.
much almost nothing, right? The money that I'm getting is the last, I don't know, 45 minutes, from 4:15 to 5 o'clock, that money goes to me, right? So, I mean, I know my math is not my subject either, but if you start looking from that perspective, start understanding a lot of what the debt is and what it means and how it makes you feel, because I think that's a big aspect that most people don't even talk about either.
Yeah,
Then you
dude, dig
start
into that,
to,
man. Like, let's
yeah.
talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so think about it this way. We know people who have a lot of debt, and let's say they have millions of dollars in debt, and people who have no debt, and people who have very little debt. And what most people don't look at and don't recognize is how does that make them feel? What's the emotional attachment, emotional responses that we get from this debt, right? Are you able to sleep at night? You know, are you stressed out or it doesn't matter to you? Like the person who has millions of dollars in debt, they can totally sleep at night because that debt is providing certain lifestyle, certain cash flow, whatever for them, and they're really good with it, right? So to a point, obviously, because if that debt doesn't perform anymore, guess what?
We
It's
could,
a
yeah, we'll
different
talk about
conversation.
non-performing debt in a second. But dude,
Yeah.
I want to double tap on that because like this is another oftentimes overlooked dimension of debt. It is not just a financial equation. It's not just math. It's how you feel about it. You know, to your point, man, some people like they'll owe somebody $50 and it'll keep them up at night and they'll pay them off the first thing and you know they get the money. Other people are like totally fine with like making minimum payments on their credit card and they don't care that they're wasting thousands and thousands of dollars on interest. And like, so you need to decide for yourself, like where you are on that spectrum. You know, some people are very uncomfortable, you know, having, you know, a mortgage for a rental property at 80% leverage. And other people are like, no, I'm not going to go over 50 or, and so you got to kind of make these decisions. And like, so, and there's no right or wrong, you know, I just had this experience actually recently, man. So little backstory here. Like I had a 2003 Toyota 4Runner with 400 and I want it, man. I have a picture. I took a picture. 486,000 miles on it, I believe,
That was an
somewhere around
awesome
there.
car, by the way.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean, we
dude,
were hitting for 500, weren't we?
yeah. And so it dies, and I had to buy a new car, and so I looked at mortgage rates for the cars. So not mortgage rates, car loan rates, and it was like 4.5%. And I had money sitting aside because I knew this, like I knew my car wouldn't last forever. And I'm like, no, you know what? I can go lend this money out and I can make 12% and a few points. Like, and I'll, I can make the spread, right? So the difference between the 4.5 and the 12%, that's like over 7% interest I can make every year. Da, da, da. And I got the car loan. I made one payment, dude. And I'm like, forget this. Like, no way. Like, it just felt so like icky. Like I did not like it. So I just paid it off. And someone might look at me and be like, well, that was stupid. Like, that was dumb. You could have just made 7% interest a year plus points, blah, blah. Like, but it was how I felt about it that made me choose that decision. It wasn't the math, it was how I felt about it.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. If you kept the payments, right, and you kept going the same road and how you feel about it, do you think that would have any effect on the rest of your life, or is it just that?
Of course, man. Like this, yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Like this stuff like is cumulative. Like we think we're so good at segmenting like each different part of our life, and this is where like the vision, like quick plug for life in our vision here, like every part is interconnected. Like if you're not healthy, that will seep into your relationships, and that will seep into your business, and that will seep into your other parts. And so like when you're, to Peter's point, dude, when when you're thinking about and stressed about and worrying about debt and feeling icky and it's affecting you negatively, that of course will spill into other parts of your life too, right?
Yeah, because think about this, right? Like, do I go to the gym? How am I eating? Am I eating healthy or now I'm eating snacks and crap, whatever's the closest to me, right? How is my relationship with my kids? Am I, totally at peace with them or am I getting shorter? Same thing with my significant other or whatever it might be, right?
Well,
So it is a destabilizing kind of a force that kind of can have a negative really effect on the whole bunch of stuff in your life.
well, dude, and listen, I admittedly I might have a little bit of PTSD around debt because like I don't know if I've ever revealed this on the show or not, but there was one point in my life, gosh, man, trying to think of how long ago it was, 15, 18 years ago, somewhere in there.
Like 47
It
years
was a
ago.
while ago. It was a while ago where I had like almost 90 grand in credit card debt, the credit card debt. Now you might be thinking like, what an idiot. And you would be right in thinking that
I
because
already
like
thought about that before, way
it was
before.
smart until it wasn't like, and so I had a whole bunch of real estate courses on there and trainings, and I was flipping houses on it and buying materials and like all kind. Like one year, I like there was an unexpected tax bill I put on my credit, like a lot of dumb reasons. But the point is this, man. Like I lost a lot of sleep for years trying to get out of that because I wasn't making
Mhm.
the money that I'm making now back then, and that was like a lot. I mean, that's still real. That's real money, and every month thousands of dollars going towards credit card bills. I've never even tallied up how much interest I actually paid. I'd probably get sick if I did, but like so I don't want to have payments, and I will never, by the way, go into credit card debt again, God willing. And like so, this is something that like I'm really passionate about because I've been there. Like I have felt that weight of debt. Now, and in all fairness, yes, we're talking about consumer debt here, but there's also business debt. We'll get to that, but like let's just finish the conversation on consumer debt. So like maybe if you can't afford, and this is man, one of the things that I think is responsible for people going into debt is like just trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? Or actually
Mhm.
one up the Joneses, like and getting or this attitude of like I deserve it, like oh, I work hard, I deserve this. Yeah, well, you might feel like you deserve it, and maybe you did work hard, but like if you can't afford it, you could be taking a risk here and putting extra stress on yourself, and it's not going to feel as good as you think.
Yeah, actually, I know a couple in my own life that's friends of my wife's that keeping up with the Joneses. They ended up buying this big house. It's on the lake. It's a beautiful house. They have the view and everything. They've always kind of wanting it. What ends up happening is the husband is working pretty much 24/7. Sometimes he even sleeps at his workplace because he has to, keep
Afford it.
working. And his health is declining. And he actually has health issues, but he can't stop because, he's not going to be able to pay for the thing, right? So the point I'm making with this, and I think what the point, Vojo is talking about too, is like when you start digging deeper into this whole debt conversation and you start looking from what are my beliefs around it, right? What is that, like if it's like keeping up with the Joneses kind of a thing, if that is really true for you, I would question that, right? Is it really true? Because that can take me to a whole another, area where I can't afford my life because now I constantly have to work to be able to go and pay for this, that. Think about it this way, like how many of us, and I get lifestyle, times change, inflation, whatever you want to call it, the life that we had, let's say 20 years ago, and we were thinking, man, if only I made, extra $10,000, extra $20,000, that'll be good. And now we are making that. And now we're like, the same conversation happens. If only you made $20,000 more,
Oh,
right?
bro, what a lie that is, right?
Right. And it's like, we start looking and like, wow, you know what? the lifestyle that I was asking for 20 years ago, I'm living that, and now I'm still not terrible. Feeling like that. It's a moving goalpost, right? It's constantly keeps moving. So start digging into the belief system, the value system. That if that is something that you don't like about that, what are the beliefs that are actually keeping me in this thing? Because I think there is something to that.
Well, dude, I think, I think the ultimate flex and the irony of this whole thing is like when you actually have more money than the Joneses and you don't feel the need to prove yourself anymore, you actually you'll start wearing like, you know, old Navy jeans and
Hmm?
Target t-shirts. Like, and you actually, the irony is you don't care because you've already won and you don't have anything to prove. Like, dude, I remember when I used to go to the gym back in the day before I had, competed and done well in bodybuilding, like I would be that kind of guy who's wearing like the tank tops and stuff. Dude, don't judge.
Spandex. Is
And
that what you're wearing too?
no
The
spandex,
tidies.
but I did have like the string tank tops and like, and by the way, this was like the 90s. Okay. So like it was
Don't
acceptable
make
back then.
excuses. Uh-huh. Yeah, this
But
was the 90s.
I felt like I had something to prove. Like, hey, look at me.
Uh-huh.
Like, but it was all insecurity and trying to get attention. But dude, after I started winning shows, I'm wearing bulky sweatshirts and a pant. Like you're not, I no longer, I wore what I wanted to wear. And like, so that's the ultimate flex here. And the irony is like when you actually win, like you don't care what other people think and you're not trying to keep up with the Joneses anymore because like you already won. Like,
Yeah.
so just, how about you just fast forward to that point now and just don't care now. Right. And
Yeah.
like, that's how you can avoid a lot of this problems.
And one of the things that we see at the events, right, when people go through this entire process of writing their vision, and we have the discussions about that, right? I see a lot of times there comes freedom with the realization of this conversation, what we just talked about. When they finally realize, you know what? Why do I need to do all that, right? And maybe keep things like simpler. Like one of the biggest principles that we teach in Life on Air is simplicity,
Yeah.
right? When you start to get that, all of a sudden you start to recognize, you know what? My life can be simpler and I don't have to deal with so many other things. Like I don't have 1,400, people coming to me every single day, asking for something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. Well, let's dig into that and transition that into commercial. Because so I listen, I think we could all
Yeah.
agree. It'd be tough to think of an exception of why consumer debt would be a good idea. But let's look at business debt,
Mhm.
real estate debt. Now, listen, if your goal is to amass a huge portfolio and have 100 or 1,000 doors and millions of square footage of commercial real estate, then yeah, you're gonna need to take on debt most likely. But to Peter's point, dude, like I simplicity is where it's at. Like, and this is where, you know, I, I think people sometimes misunderstand like life and airs. Like, it's not about lowering the bar. It's about just really highlighting and going after what you want the most. And this is where the number I keep seeing over and over again. And by the way, your number could be higher or lower for people. People are like, man, I just want to make 10 grand a month of passive cash flow. By the way, passive cash flow is a myth. Let's just call it recurring income, right? Whether it's a rental or whatever. I just want 10 grand a month. And that doesn't take 100 door portfolio to do. And so I, I guess it depends on your goals. Like, if you just want a few free and clear properties, and by the way, I'm not partial to rental real estate at all. I'm just using this as an example. Then you may be a lot closer than you think, and you may not need to take on like millions and millions of dollars of debt. And by the way, if you want to, that's fine too. Like but I just want you to understand like that things can go wrong when you take on debt. And you kind of mentioned it before, man. Like we talked about the emotional side of things, but there's also like you've got to recognize, especially in real estate and business debt, it doesn't really happen too much in as much on the consumer side of things, but like banks can call notes due. And I
That
personally have a good friend, dude, who lost a 50 plus property portfolio back in 0809 when the banks literally just decided one day that their risk allocation numbers were off and they didn't feel comfortable. Like he was not delinquent on any of his notes, on any of his mortgages. the bank just didn't like the risk ratio, and they called him due, and he had several $1 million he had to pay in 90 days, and the portfolio went back to the bank. And so, like, good debt, quote unquote, good debt is good when it works, and it's not so good when it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then as I'm hearing you talk, the constantly what comes back to is like, what is your vision?
Yeah.
And I think what ends up happening is people don't look at the holistic picture of the vision. And I constantly challenge like my students to, like, when you talk about, okay, what does your vision say? And it's not just the one part, right? Let's say the money part, but look at your holistic picture of your vision. How does that affect your family? How does that affect your marriage? How does that affect your, relationship with your kids, your health, all the different things? Because think about it this way. We all have 24 hours in a day, right? I wish I could have 25th. If anybody has figured out to do 25th hour, let me know. I would love to do that, right? So, but the thing is, we have 24 hours in a day, and there's ways to leverage people, leverage money, and leverage all kinds of different things. However, when you start looking at that kind of a picture, there's always, if you fill that time and then you start building something, you're going to have to take something out in order to replace it. Like, are you going to take out, let's say, your time with your kids? Or are you going to take out the time with the gym? Most people go and start taking out things that are, them specifically, like a gym or morning time or whatever it might be, in order to get to that big number that they want. And, and how long is it going to take you, right? So when you start looking at the holistic picture of your vision and you start seeing, how long that's going to take me to get there, you get to choose whether or not you want to go down that road or you want to pick a different road. And we have people, when they come to Life on Air, they say, well, listen, I want $10,000 a month in income. Well, if I get free and clear houses, depending on the market, might have me do what, 10, 11, 12 houses, and that's it to get
or
to
less,
that.
dude. You got three. You could have five.
Depends on the market, right? I mean, if you have $1,000 a month,
totally. So, and by the way, there's also other ways other than debt to finance these things.
Right.
And so I guess
partnerships, right?
Right, man. So like the point is this, like there's no right or wrong. It's only what fits your vision. But certainly you want to understand what you're taking on when you decide to go into debt, and using this information and giving it more consideration than just the math will allow you to really make sure that this is the right decision for you.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, listen, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you do something with it. If you'd like to further this debt discussion, find us on Facebook. We have a Life in Air group that you can come in and just ask questions and share. And Peter and I are in there, and we'd love to help answer questions and maybe at some point in the future get you out to a Life in Air event as well, which I know you'd love. All right, we'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.